Hey everybody, time for the recap of the Ice Cream One Day. We had a really good time playing those questions, or I hope you had a really good time playing those over the weekend. I really enjoyed writing them, and I was pleased to see actually had a friend win the thing, which is pretty sweet. It's never ever bad to see that. So yeah, we can see here that Claudia Corrier and Heather Vance, actually both people I'm friends with on Facebook at the very least, people I've sort of met, um, yeah, did really well. And with two kind of different sets of monies, they both moneyed different 62 pointers and missed, or rather, that's not what happened. But, well, they did. They moneyed different 62 pointers and then just had a different set of gets. So it's an interesting little day there. Um, anyway. And yeah, neither of them got all 12 right, but they still won, which is fun. That's always nice. Not too many people got them all, which is great to see. So anyway, I'm just going to kind of go over the questions, talk about what I was doing and maybe some interesting tidbits, and we'll just do that. So the first question was, carrageenan is a polysaccharide sometimes used as a stabilizing agent in ice cream. What possibly surprising source does carrageenan come from? Well, the answer comes from red edible seaweed, or algae, which is like Irish moss, stuff like that. So yeah, seaweed and algae were good enough. About 50% of people got that. See, this is one of these funny things because I learned that in elementary school for whatever reason. Obviously, some people may haven't forgotten or some people didn't, but maybe I thought it was going to be a little easier because I remembered knowing it as a kid and because my wife knew it right away and she's not a big trivia person. But yeah, it was nice. It played right there in the middle, a little bit harder than I wanted it to be, but it was a nice tester. A lot of clustering in the middle. The second question. Known as the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, the 1904 World's Fair in what city saw the popularization of the ice cream cone? So I gave you the Louisiana Purchase as a location, a likely location for the World's Fair, which is why 83% of you got it right. City is now arguably better known for frozen custard than ice cream. I think there's not really any specific famous ice cream thing associated with St. Louis, not that I'm aware of, but Ted Drew's frozen custard, I think, is from there, and that's pretty famous snack to have there in St. Louis. Fun fact, the ice cream cone was probably invented by a Syrian immigrant whose name was Ernest Hamwi. Him and Mr. J.P. Heckel went into business selling them after he appears to have maybe given people some waffles to hold their melting ice cream, and then it sort of spread throughout the World's Fair because there were lots of waffles and lots of ice cream there, which makes a lot of sense. I think people just tend to know that the 1904 World's Fair was St. Louis, and the Olympics were there that year too, which came up on the Summer Olympics questions. So that was kind of cool. Question 3. The pictured treat has the classic layers of chocolate, cherry, and pistachio. What is its most common name? So right here we're looking at something called spumoni. I would say these three are the most common flavors, though spumoni just means Italian ice cream, gelato or ice cream with nuts and fruit in it. So if you have a lot of candied cherries, easy to find, maraschino cherries, you put those in with cherry, you get your pistachios in the pistachio, and that's what you've got. I think it's basically a really good alternative to fruitcake. If you care, National Spumoni Day is in 13 days in the US, but it's in November in Canada because we had to have 2 different Spumoni days. Question 4. Okay. A massive ice cream parlor in Havana figures prominently in the film Strawberry and Chocolate. What is its name, taken from a Leo Delibes ballet about a life-size doll? Well, Leo Delibes ballet is Coppelia. This is one of these one-hit wonders in classical music. I was more interested in the, fact that, I think most people who did get it, 15% of you who did, probably knew the opera, but there were probably a few of you that may have been to Havana and gone to Coppelia, which is pretty famous ice cream parlor there. It's really the flagship location is really large and just kind of old 60s kind of design, these really interesting like long benches where you sit on stools and get ice cream, kind of a old time fancy ice cream parlor. Nowadays I think the thing has gone downhill a bit, but it's really big and a really cool place. So Strawberry and Chocolate is a good film, nominated for the Oscar for Best Foreign Film, and comes from the Caribbean, and was asked about in the Caribbean one day because apparently I have a thing for the film Strawberry and Chocolate. Question 5. The Little Creamery in Brenham, Texas is the original home of what ice cream company? The first to mass produce cookies and cream, and now the 4th best-selling brand in the United States. The cookies and cream fact was just an interesting fact. Basically, I'm asking you what's the biggest ice cream company from Texas if you've had their cow-shaped, or not their cow-shaped, but if you've had their tubs with cows on them, you would recognize Bluebell. This is probably still a little bit regional, but I think they've gone fairly national at this point. They have delicious ice cream. I remember their cookie dough being really good, and I remember when we went to Texas, there being a noticeable difference between the quality of that ice cream and what I was able to buy in the store in Michigan. So, yeah, nice little regional thing that's kind of gone national. It started in 1911 or so, and I believe actually went fully to the ice cream. Named itself Bluebell in 1930, so it's been around a while too. 6. Many different brands, including Mayfield, though there are a lot, license the right to a particular flavor from the company Denali Flavors. What vanilla fudge and peanut butter cup flavor is it? Well, you get vanillas. You put fudge chunks or brownie chunks and peanut butter cups in vanilla, and you have Moose Tracks, obviously named after moose, which are common in Alaska. It doesn't look much like Moose Tracks, but it is a fun name for an ice cream flavor, and it is a delicious ice cream flavor. Sometimes you'll see it as fudge peanut butter cup or vanilla fudge peanut butter cup because people don't want to pay the rights for Moose Tracks, which is pretty funny. But anything with those little peanut butter cups in it is likely to be Moose Tracks kind of ice cream. Anyway, question 7. 2 answers required. Please name the character seen here and the company who created it. Well, I couldn't ask about ice cream in America without asking about ice cream cakes, and specifically these are Carvel ice cream cakes. Turns out there's a Carvel in 48 or 47 states now, so it's not purely a regional question, though I do know that they're pretty much seen as a northeastern thing, I think sort of New York, New Jersey area, but there's a Carvel in Atlanta, there's a Carvel in Cary, North Carolina, so they've been very well known by a lot of my different friends, places that I've lived. I don't know if Fudgy the Whale here is actually that good, because I tend to think that maybe ice cream cakes from Baskin-Robbins are a little better because they got better ice cream. Is that a terrible thing to say? It's my own opinion. I know I'm talking about Baskin-Robbins ice cream, which is not exactly legendary itself. But anyway, yeah, Fudgy the Whale. This one I left the picture off, and hilariously, several of my friends messaged me, and 2 of them said, "Is it Fudgy the Whale?" And it was. As I suspected at that point, expected a little bit higher get rate, but it was, yeah, 53% of you got it right, which is lower than Bluebell, which is a little bit. Or higher than Bluebell, which is maybe not what I expect. Question 8. Ben and Jerry has had difficulty selling a Saturday Night Live themed flavor, particularly because of a boycott by parents. What unsubtle pun from a delicious dish sketch was also the name of the flavor? Of course, this was Sweaty Balls. People who have been watching Match Game were reminded of this several times. I think they've brought it up because it's one of Alec Baldwin's crowning comedy achievements, and Anna Gasteyer was on the show as well, so that was probably part of the reason they've been bringing that up lately. That is a great sketch, the old Sweaty Balls sketch on the delicious dish, and that's where they went. Most send up of NPR and the reactions people have to things on NPR shows, and it is in that regard extremely, extremely funny. Question 9. In this clip, Captain Scrummy is offering the elder Pete of Pete and Pete, one of the greatest kids shows of all time, a word of caution in his search for Mr. Tasty, one of the greatest kids show episodes of all time, and delivering a tribute to the ice cream man in the process. Not known as an actor, what man is playing Captain Scrummy? Well, some of you, quite a few of you, 17%, on a relatively difficult question, were able to identify this as Michael Stipe's voice. Michael Stipe, of course, the lead singer of REM, who has a fairly noticeable cadence, noticeable voice. He kind of sings in the same voice he talks in, so some of you are probably able to come up with that off of that, or you've just remember this episode. I consider this episode about Pete and Pete's summer vacation searching for the identity of their ice cream man who kind of wears an ice cream cone head. to be one of the actual great like meditations on summer ever created. It's really, really good. I think everybody should go out and watch the Mr. Tasty episode of Pete and Pete. I'm not even saying that ironically, maybe like tiny bit nostalgically, but it really is fantastic. And it's just like lyrical, and it takes childhood seriously, and that whole show is just really great. Anyway, question 10. According to his daughter, Ruben Mattis sat at the kitchen table for hours saying nonsense words until he came up with what Danish-sounding name? Of course, this Danish-sounding name is Häagen-Dazs. Häagen-Dazs, of course, not actually a real thing, not actually a real term. So 91% of you are able to come up with that. Probably almost 91% of you know that it's not really a word that means anything. It's kind of like Farfignugan, but of ice cream. Question 11. Mark Twain and Dolly Madison, yeah, I know, were both noted fans of ice cream, probably served unsweetened, made with what ingredient that could be found in the Potomac and in New York Harbor? Current popular sources of the ingredient include Wellfleet, Massachusetts. George Washington also allegedly really liked oyster ice cream. I assume that this tasted a little more like an oyster chowder or an oyster stew because it wasn't sweetened. And so maybe if you would be inclined to like cold oyster stew, you'd be inclined to like iced oyster stew. But then again, I'm thinking maybe just 19th century taste buds that were used to getting by on a lot of different food would tolerate this a lot better than we would. Basically, I wanted to write a question about gross fish ice cream. And I thought about, I had written and tried several ways to write a question about Hiroyuki Sakai's legendary trout ice cream that he served up on the first episode of Iron Chef America, Battle of the Whatevers. He lost. Everyone hated it because it was ice cream made from ground up trout, which is gross. But this felt like a better question because it had more entry points. Like I couldn't figure out what I was going to ask. Trout felt unfair. Hiroyuki Sakai is just a question about Iron Chef. It's not really a question about ice cream. I already wanted to put in that Pete and Pete question that was like a little different. So, yeah. I gave you the Wellfleet clue. 1 point. This question also included a Blue Point clue. I think Blue Point oysters maybe even a little bit more well known than the Blue Point oysters are a little bit more well known than Wellfleet oysters. So you probably would have had a little better time of it with this. But I was really happy with this. Ended up with 38% guessing it. Yeah, Mark Twain, Dolly Madison have both written things or had things like specifically written about them that dealt with their love of oyster ice cream. And finally, question 12. A city of great importance in ice cream history, it was home to the Hamilton Beach Company, which became famous for its drink machines, and also to the powdered infant nutrition supplement that eventually became Horlicks malted milk. Of course, those two things, a drink machine and some malted milk powder, are what you need to make a malt. I love that malted milk powder was originally an infant supplement. But you know what's funny is modern infant supplements, like my kids drink formula, tastes like malted milk just a little bit too. Anyway, what city in southeastern Wisconsin, just north of Kenosha, was home to these milkshake staples? Well, that's Racine, Wisconsin, home of the Hamilton Beach Company. I think it's still the world headquarters. It was for a long time, and home of Horlicks. Anymore, I don't know if you can get a better milkshake in Racine than you can anywhere else, but its proximity to Chicago meant that the milkshake became closely associated with the American Midwest and kind of that 1950s like Hill Valley, California, which I know is not actually the Midwest, but it's kind of doing an impersonation of it in Back to the Future. Yeah, kind of caused the milkshake to take off from there. I know that there were probably milkshakes before that, but in doing my research, apparently what would the drugstore malted milkshake was definitely the Hamilton Beach was kind of the classic Cadillac of milkshake machines that you would use to make that. So that was in Racine. If you were guessing a Wisconsin city that wasn't Milwaukee or Green Bay, you might land on Racine. And yeah, that happens to be correct. I only asked this question after I looked up both malted milk and Hamilton Beach and found out that they both sort of came from Racine, Wisconsin, and was like, that is amazing. Because I wanted to write a question about malts or milkshakes, and it turned out just to be very well fated. So I didn't know that they were both from Racine at all before I started writing this, but I thought it was interesting. So good job to the 23% of you that knew some Wisconsin geography there or had good guesses. Anyway. those are the questions. I hope that they were enjoyable. I'm interested in hearing what people have to say, so go ahead and have at it in the thread. Everything was really fun on this. Thanks to all the testers, thanks to my other helpers, and it was great. I already submitted some ideas for next year. Hopefully I get picked to write one. So we will see you around. Good luck to everybody in the championship this weekend too. Bye-bye.